if you look at it, this is a definition that is also very well reflected by Matthew Ball's definition of metaverse. Matthew is an author and investor, very active on the metaverse world, and he talks quite a bit of metaverse, has a very strong views on it. So to me, that's a product or service kind of a view for the experiences that you can get in metaverse. The other set of definitions is which try to treat metaverse as a place. And in this kind of a visualization, this is very abundant when you look at gaming and creative platforms. They look at it as a place, and that's the lens that they carry, because of which, and then their use cases also tend to be from that line of sight. So for them, metaverse looks like a place, and some of those definitions tend to reflect that. There's a third school that has also emerged lately, which is more social in nature. It is looking at metaverse as a moment of experience. And this is the one which is probably more progressive towards human experiences and socio-cultural behaviors, societies, communities kind of a definition. And it visualizes metaverse as a point in time where your digital lives become more meaningful than physical lives in certain periods of time. When we say digital life, it basically means your online identities, your experiences, your relationships, and much more importantly, your digital assets or virtual assets that you have. This school of thought, if you have to look for an example, look at Shaan Puri's definition. Shaan is a startup entrepreneur. If you look at his definition, it is pretty much geared towards visualizing metaverse as a moment of to experience, right? So given that, if you ask me as to how do you want to look at metaverse, my answer is there's no unique common definition. Everyone is trying to look at the metaverse world from the lens of use or exploring or getting onto that, and that's how they're adopting to different definitions. Metaverse it means different things to different people, and that in a way is good, because it also means that metaverse is not something very concise. It's not a technology framework or not a technology platform. It's a much more bigger human interaction and experiences bundled together into a platform which requires you to bring in tons of different technologies together, and we'll talk about that a bit later. So with that, if I jump into the next slide, and I'm going to try to address this a little quickly. Generally, people tend to present their data and stuff and everything, and then talk about whether it's a hyper reality. I'll do that early on, so that then later when we talk about metaverse, this is already done and dusted. So in terms of, if you look at whether metaverse, how do you evaluate at this juncture, right? To me, if I look at it, when we started working on these concepts, we have been working on actually AR/VR for quite some time, more than 5-6 years now, but specifically around the constructs of metaverse, when we started working on last year onwards, 2021, if somebody would have raised this question to me, I would probably have been sitting on the fence. I would not have been able to make up my mind as to whether it is still going through the hype cycle or we are starting to see some real use cases and adoptions. But as of now, if you look at where we are, if you just track the last 2-3 months of activities, you will see that there are so many organizations that are already coming on metaverse. They are exploring metaverse. They are doing things which are conceptually what a metaverse represents. Maybe they are doing it on their own a metaverse or equivalent of a digital platform, but pretty much getting in line with what is expected to come out of metaverse. So to me, at this juncture, metaverse is a virtual space already available, which is focused on convergence of digital and physical worlds. The most important distinction is through immersive experiences, and that is what distinguishes it from any other thing that you look at before the metaverse pieces. And this is also causing us a rapid transformation and evolution from an individual-based ecosystem to a social or a community experience driven ecosystem as well. If and looking at all this, when I see that the Gartner is already predicting that 25% of the people will spend at least 1 hour per day in the metaverse by 2026. Look at the cities report on metaverse industry to become $8 to $13 trillion by 2030. And the number of organizations that we are seeing across different industries that are already experimenting and getting on board metaverse use cases. To me, it has started looking like it is reality now. People are there. There are quite a few people now who are getting onto it, who are working on not only creating the framework, components, the plumbing components and plumbing pieces that are required to make metaverse tick, but we are also seeing organizations and individuals who are getting onto these exploiting and exploring these feature sets. There are some other data points as well that are available that also indirectly show you as to the direction in which this whole thing is moving. If you look at it, the transactions worth over $50 billion on virtual goods are now happening every year, and this number is moving up exponentially. If you look at just the Roblox platform, which is an online gaming platform, there are over 60 billion messages per day that are being exchanged on Roblox. If you look at the non-fungible tokens, which is an integral part of in the whole concept of metaverse, the NFTs market cap is already beyond $50 billion, and it's supposed to hit $800 billion by 2024. Actually, let me correct myself, it was around $50 billion in 2020. And by 2024, it will be around $800 billion. People are already spending more than $207 million on metaverse items. These are virtual items, right? Virtual items. The spend of people is already touching $207 million. And if you just look at the spend on the global AR, VR, and XR market, that is also getting into $300 billion by 2024. All these areas give you that sign that the volumes are coming in, the economies are firing now, NFTs are catching up, NFTs are getting applied and used in multiple places. So for me, this is no longer an hype. This is a reality. It's probably early days of metaverse. Metaverse is still evolving, but to some extent, we can say very reasonably that we are dealing with the reality of metaverse, unlike the hype cycle that we have seen in past also for some of the technologies. In fact, some of the technologies that we are now leveraging in metaverse as well are starting to mature and become more acceptable. So with that, my view, we are into reality. It's early time, early period. Metaverse will evolve further. There are quite a few areas that require more work, but metaverse as a virtual space focused on convergence of digital and physical worlds is happening already. There are umpteen experiences that I'll talk about, examples I'll talk about, which will give you that sense as well. So with that, jumping on to the next slide, which is an example of looking at the paradigm shift in managing experiences, just to highlight to you once again, what do we mean by immersive experiences and how that is becoming different, how that is becoming more community-led or group of people in a social setup doing certain activities and emphasizing on the activities that they are doing and the experiences thereby. And one of the very good common examples that everybody can associate with very easily is the shopping experience. If you look at the real life example of evolution of human experiences, one thing that you'll see is in the shopping world, we have already moved from, or the experience has been transformed from being a physical shopping experience to also having phone shopping, followed by online shopping. And now we are talking about meta shopping, right? One important thing to note is, even now the shopping experience is not just one of them. All three coexist, the physical, the phone, the online shopping, all three of them coexist right now because they cater to different experiences in different scenarios for different items they apply. And that's the way you have to look at that. Metaverse, whatever we are doing, that virtual world has to coexist with the physical world. It is there to complement, not to compete. From convenience perspective, the experience perspective, the more sensors become available, the more we can simulate and emulate the digital twins of the various senses that humans use, the more you will find that the shopping experience will become enjoyable in the meta world. So if you look at it with meta shopping, what the reason that people still go for physical shopping, what drives them to physical shopping, for example, is the touch and feel experience is missing right now, right? So when you're looking at items which you want to touch and feel, generally the tendency is to look for it physically by going to a mall or to a particular shop and then going and placing an order. That's a piece that is missing right now. Most of the other visual and most of the visual things are already available. Many of them are already giving us videos and audios associated with it if there's a audio sense involved in evaluating the item. So videos and hearing, the two basic senses, are pretty well covered, well understood, and a lot of equipment around which support those, right from phones to laptops to most of the devices. And that is why you'll find that the online shopping leverages those two senses and does an effective job when it comes to shopping where you primarily use those two senses. The place where it doesn't work well is when you start looking at touch and feel kind of a combination, the feel of touch or the sense of touch. And that is starting to get addressed now with haptics. I don't know, probably you must have seen and heard about Tesla suit. It still comes at a premium, but it's a suit made up of fabric-like material, which gives you the entire sense of touch and feel, including things like you can feel rain and moisture. By the way, when I say Tesla suit, I also initially thought that it has got something to do with Tesla, but it has not. When I started reading about it and going through the literature, I realized that it has got nothing to do with Tesla. It's just incidental that the product name Tesla suit is there. And there are other haptic devices already, gloves. You have seen a lot of gaming controls which already have haptics in it. But Tesla suit is almost like full body suit, which can simulate a lot of touch and feel senses. And right now, even though it's a costly affair, around $20,000 a suit, but the idea is that now that it is possible, we will see technology quickly making it available to the masses, and then the touch and feel experience will also start kicking into the digital world. The concept of community, the concept of society, we have already seen. There are virtual communities, virtual groups that exist already, and those is what we will be leveraging anyways when it comes to the second part of the experience, which is right now missing in the online shopping experiences. Most of your online shopping experiences right now are person to the store, not multiple people talking to each other, enjoying the experience, sharing the experience while they are doing it. So that's the second part of what we call the community feeling and community experience of doing things together. Metaverse is supposed to give us that as well. So those are the two important things, the immersive experiences, as we call it, and social interactions, which are the two things that we see as the evolution of Metaverse to the next level. We can move on, Krishna. Sorry about that. So very quickly, if we understand now at a high level, Metaverse, the key things that it offers and differentiates is being an immersive experience, all around experience, along with a social experience or social interaction built together. Then if you try to look at Metaverse, that is where when you start looking at definitions and what Metaverse is, it becomes a little tricky. And over a period of time, what happened was John Radoff, who was entrepreneur as well as a gaming buff and gaming designs and other stuff. He's also the CEO of Beamable. He is doing a lot of work and a lot of, he's almost like a thought leader in this particular space. And he sort of came up with this, this layer and elements model for the Metaverse. because that tends to help explain what metaverse is, rather than trying to create a crisp definition out of it. So it's getting very widely accepted also, because it's very simple to understand, but it also explains to you what are the complexities that you have to deal with, the various components that come into play in the overall metaverse ecosystem. So if you look at it, this is a 7-layer model, and you can see that you will see variations of these. So it's not that these layers are a must. This is just understand that this is one way of understanding what metaverse is all about. So in some other descriptions and some other models, you will see that there are 5-layer models also. There are 4-layer models also. Generally, some of these layers get collapsed when that kind of a thing happens, or the view of that definition does not bother about some of the layers. That's what I have noticed when that kind of a difference is there. So I will use the 7-layer model. I like it. It helped me understand when I was first time looking at to get a sense of metaverse, how to look at it. That's what I got here. So to me, the way John Rudolph explains this is there's an experience layer sitting right at the top, right? And then there's a discovery, then there's a creator's economy, spatial computing, decentralization, and then human interface and infrastructure. So the last 3 are more of the what we also call as the hardware layers. Some of it is hardware, some of that is software, but a mix of hardware layers is what sits at in all these 3. Sorry about that. In terms of experience, if you look at it, in terms of the moment you say metaverse, a lot of people in general tend to think of metaverse as a 3D version of the real world. So it's a virtual world, which is a 3D world, which mimics or emulates or simulates real world. In true definition of metaverse, that is a part of metaverse, but that is not the whole metaverse. The way you look at it is the 3D, 2D, and graphics are essential pieces of the metaverse. But what is more important is the metaverse tends to visualize the physical space that, or the physical world that we are in a more dematerialized form, right? So metaverse for this school of thought is, or for most of the people, is basically dematerialized version of your physical space, objects, and even distance. So that's what we look at as the experience layer in terms of what it gives you as a user in the virtual world. You can still experience very similar to what you see in your physical space, the objects, and as well as the distance. And some of these distances are dematerialized. So when you jump from one world to another, that's what we mean by dematerialization of the distance. You could be jumping from one city to another in a moment. Once you enter that particular simulation or that economy or that model or that game construct, then you follow the more proper rules of engagement and timelines as you work through that. But because jumping across virtual worlds is possible, that's where we say dematerializing your physical spaces, objects, and distance, all 3 together. The important thing is that once you realize that the physical spaces, the moment they become dematerialized, the constraints of the physicality that we live with is lifted. Yes, and that is where the abundance of experience is supposed to kick in. So metaverse, basically, the moment you remove the physicality constraint and you are able to do things in the virtual world, it can give you abundance of experiences that otherwise you may not be able to enjoy day to day. Now, what does that mean? I think if I give you an example, it becomes much more easier. In very simple terms, if you're doing a concert, which is a virtual concert, and this is something that has happened already in 2020, people who know Travis Scott, the rapper, his concert was done on in the metaverse world from one of the platforms, and almost 17 million or 12 million fans, I think 12 million was the number. 12 million fans created digital avatar, attended it, and all of them were had a frontline view or a front seat view. Now that is something that's very difficult for you to do in a physical world, and that's what I mean by saying that when the physicality constraints are removed, the abundance of experience can be very different, and the abundance is so much that you can offer it to so many more people. So that, if you think about it, is an example of what I was talking about. If you look at the massive interactive live events, which are also referred to as MILES, when you're using the acronyms or abbreviations, a lot of big brands are already going after these, because when these are hosted on these platforms like Decentraland or Roblox, you basically can reach out to a lot more people. You can give them a lot more personalized behavior, experience, and that's what creates a stickiness for you. The case I was referring to earlier, it was done on Epic Games Fortnite. That is a video game, and there were 12 million fans created who created their avatars and gathered in a virtual space to watch the rapper. And this is April 2020, so 2 years back. So some of these things that I'm talking about, if you look at it, some of the platforms which have been there, who are becoming pieces and parts of the overall metaverse stack, they're already there and making it, and these things are already happening. If you look at the discovery layer, as the name suggests, this is the layer where the push and pull happens, which introduces people to new experiences. So when we say push and pull, when a pull is more like an inbound discovery, when as a person, if I'm in the metaverse and I'm actively looking for something, so I'm trying to pull information, or I'm trying to find objects, or I'm trying to find information, I'll find my own friend or whoever else is there, and that's a pull model of discovery. I'm trying to discover who all is there in the same space that I'm in. Are my friends there? Do I know somebody who's there, kind of a thing? Or if I'm looking for a particular item or an object. So it's a pull kind of a model. Push model is a conventional model. Think of it as the model where the providers can push information to us in terms of offerings, in terms of events that are going to happen through emails or through messages in the system directly, or inboxes on the systems or on these platforms, all that stuff. So you basically get to look at, and if you look at it, that's what you can see even in the slide, that the ad world is like a push model that you have, that you can use. Social curations, ratings, store, all these things that you're looking at, they are means and modes of discovering things that you're looking for. So discovery layer is going to be very important in the metaverse layers and elements. It allows you as a person to find new content, find things that others have created, digital assets, which are by brands or which are used as marketing tools, can become available to you. You can also find a lot of things in forms of NFT as well. NFTs, in fact, are the early examples that people look for and discover, and stuff like that. In fact, many of you would remember, not just now, around 6 years back, I think it was 2016 when Pokemon Go came. And if you look at Pokemon Go, the whole discovery of virtual items that you were supposed to find and collect by looking at your mobile devices, where suddenly an item would pop up in a particular location, and then people would go to that location, right? So that is another model that you can look at, as in terms of how people are discovering items they're actively looking for, watching for, and then going after that item. So a lot of ways to create various stickiness, experiences, and behavior, right? Then, if you look at the creator economy, which is very important layer, this is where we say that the creators are no longer 2 or 3 big players or 2 or 3 key players who are controlling all the creation. This is where the creator economy basically means that users can not only enjoy their content as they're experiencing the content that has been created by others, they can actually create their own content as well, right? And that is truly a creator's economy, and that is where the democratization of the creator economy will happen. When I say that users will be able to create their own contents, the fundamental underpinning there is that enough tools are already available. Things like low-code, no-code platforms that are available, various tools which wrap around these things and make it easy for a creator to create content without worrying about the underlying programming, computer literacy that is required for it. And that is what is triggering off the democratization of the creators economy. People are able to create content as individuals and post it up in this part of the world. Nothing new again. It may sound as if this is new, but think about it. YouTube, people are already posting all kind of videos there. TikTok took it to another level when you did that, right? When that tool came out. What did it do? It allowed individuals to be able to create their own content, but by creating a mechanism and a medium which was easy for them to use, find and create content, edit it, and then put it up there. A lot of the people are able to use phones. There are tools available where you don't have to understand how the nitty-gritties of the video editing or image editing, but you can click and get your stuff done and then put it out there. So that is an example, if you think about in terms of creator economy, that could be used for it. Spatial computing is all to do all with the geospatial tool sets, mapping in the 3D spaces. So this is almost like imposing a virtual world on a real world, a virtual object on a real world. So augmented reality is already using it quite a bit. A lot of big manufacturing units, construction units are already using geospatial overlays on top of their actual projects to create a virtual view of how the project is doing at this point of time. So for example, if you have to look at a sea linking project, or if you have to look at an expressway project, the entire length and breadth is so huge that you can never get a single view. The only way you can understand that is if you take a view of the entire landscape and then look at what kind of things, how much progress has been made in which parts. And all that is possible through spatial computing. And these are examples. Spatial computing has also been around for quite some time. Microsoft HoloLens, Snapchat Landmarker, if you look at it, they're all examples of leveraging this technology, right? In fact, the Pokemon Go that I talked about, it also used the spatial computing because it was giving you the coordinates, the lat long, or the position of that in your Google map using spatial computing principles, and then people are able to go and try to collect that item. So a lot of examples there, things are there, they are now getting integrated together to create that social interaction and immersive experience that is required, which is the promise from the Metaverse world. Decentralization, human interface, and infrastructure, I think these we understand much better. Well, the names that you will see in this are probably, if you're not used to the Metaverse world, the names may sound new, but decentralization basically means you will have multiple players, not can, but will have multiple players who will provide you with underlying platforms. So for example, Roblox, Decentraland, and you will see some of the names in the next slide when I show you some of the players in each of these layers. It's not a complete set, but it will give you a sense of how many players are already there in these areas. So decentralization is the whole idea of not keeping it central. The controls are not central. You have almost like multiple worlds, and people are jumping from one world to another. So I, as an organization, can go and create my own world, either on a third-party metaverse or on my own, and then make mechanisms or provide mechanisms where people can jump into that. There are certain players who are creating that real estate for you, the virtual real estate. You can go and take that up and build your own systems with your virtual world that you want to simulate at that point. Decentraland and some of the other players who are already doing that. If you start looking, you'll find most of them. Human interfaces is the other interfaces that give us that sense of the senses view, the way the human sense different things. So there are video sensing, there is audio sensing, there is, as I said, sense of touch. And all these things put together, actually, Ericsson came out with a good name. They called it Internet of Senses, IOS. That was a term that was coined by Ericsson. But it basically points to the fact that when you are able to capture all this data, the things where work is still happening is the sense of smell and sense of taste. Those are the two that are left. But if we cover the sense of touch, then for the immersive experience, that becomes a key sense that you have to have. Otherwise, as a human, you may not have the full sense of, you may not enjoy that experience completely, right? But once the sense of touch comes in, it augments very well with and to give you a near full experience, even in a virtual world. So a lot of things that are around the human interfaces that I'm talking about. You have smart glasses, you have AR, VR headsets, you have brain-computer interfaces, you have these cybernetics, MEMS and NIMS that are there. So MEMS are your micro electromechanical devices, so small sensors, transducers that fit into your bodysuit or in small areas at a micro level sizes, and they help you collect data, work upon things, act upon things. They can control certain machines or pumps for emitting drugs and all that kind of things and go into that interface area. And the underlying infrastructure, that is very important, even though it's the lowest layer, but for metaverse realization to happen, and that is where you'll also get the answer of why now it's catching up, is because the infrastructure is starting to get ready for it now. And when I say infrastructure, things like you need much better network bandwidth. If you have to do all these things in a virtual world, the amount of data that will transmit. So 5G is almost a must. Going to 6G will make the experience much better. So with the advent of 5G and rollouts happening, doing the things that you want to do in the virtual world, it will give you a much more real-time, much more realistic response and feelings. The things around cloud and edge computing, you need to move to the edge. So that is also already happening now. AI, ML, the algorithms that you need to render things, there are a lot of tools already available where you can render a real world by telling the tool certain tips or giving the tool certain tips to go and render it for you. So as a creator, if you're trying to create visualizations for your world, there are tools now already available which do that as part of the different layers. But infrastructure becomes the underlying complete hardware layer where a lot of the big players are coming in and playing into it. And the advances in the infrastructure is what is helping us realize the entire stack. So this slide, I took a lot of time because this is very important in terms of understanding the 7 layers. If you understand the 7 layers, and I'll show you now the representative players in each of these. So now you can see, I'm not going to go through the players, but you can see the players. And as I said, these are representative players, right? So these are a number of them that you will see, as I said, in the decentralization. You will look at various areas that are available in spatial and computing. You will see gaming guys, you will see Google AI, you will see Matterport. Matterport is actually even Cesium and Descartes Lab. A lot of these players are doing a lot of specific things that they're taking care of using spatial computing, and then same thing for each of these layers. This is not a complete set. That's why I called it a representative player set. In fact, this whole representative players in the layer, or if you look at the entire set of the players in each of these layers, they're almost growing rapidly, if not exponentially, at this point of time. But the expectation is that this will be an exponential boom as Metaverse starts picking up more and more, as more creators start kicking into this area. So one of the things, Krishna, if you can just hold on for 1 sec on the previous slide, while I've been painting all positive, rosy pictures, but I also wanted to make sure that I do point out things which are still things that need to happen for Metaverse growth and success of Metaverse. Simple things that we are seeing from our experiences, and I think a lot of other people are also seeing this when they're playing with these technologies and other things. As we want our avatars to be more realistic, we need improved performances of digital avatars when it comes to rendering of movements, the entire rendering process, movements of the avatars itself. That is something that with better network bandwidth, with better compute powers, that will become better day by day. What we have right now, we didn't have a couple of years back. So these are some of the things that you have to look at as things that are still coming through and will take some time to get there. Additional capacity that is needed when you're dealing with these kind of things, when you're dealing with virtual worlds, which are also managing your ecosystem, managing your context around you, rendering it all in 3D. There's a huge amount of additional capacity that you require in terms of compute, in terms of how you interact within the metaverse, the AI models required for it. These are some of the things that are available in bits and pieces, but I do believe that this will require additional capacity to be catered for in the entire infrastructure that is being set up. Other thing is, right now it's very limited to this whole virtual experience is limited to devices which can give you immersive experience like AR device or a VR device or a haptic suit. But I think for this to be successful, there has to be interoperability across other devices which are much more pervasive. They may not be as immersive, but the ability to transcend from an immersive device to a regular device like a mobile or a desktop or a tablet to continue the experience. It may not be 3D, but the experience should continue. That is going to be an important thing to keep in mind for that the users will ask for very quickly, because you will realize that right now some of these AR VR headsets are reasonably heavy. You cannot keep them on for a long period of time. As a human, that does not work well for us. If you're really enjoying it, probably for some time you may do hours and hours of that, but in the longer run, we all know that can bring in health concerns and other problems. So in general, the weight and of these headsets and machines is still a problem. Work is already happening. Glasses are already coming out, which are going to be much more lightweight. These are getting addressed, but what I'm saying is some of these challenges are there. And for Metaverse to become successful and grow rapidly, we will have to see these things coming through before we see that exponential jump in the Metaverse side. And then there are a lot of other things, the governance model that you have to use, because now we are starting to move from an individual-based model to a social interaction model as well. So dealing with community, dealing with other people around you, how will the interactions happen? How do we govern them? How do you ensure that nothing asocial or criminal happens? And there are cases already that you keep seeing that keep happening. And from there, the teams and organizations are learning and very quickly bringing in the protection and the preserving of the individual's privacy needs. But at the same point, the whole thing has to be answered as to who will govern it. Some governance is required. Who will set up the rules for governance? And that is going to be a very difficult nut to crack in a decentralized model. And then if the rules are set up, then who will govern it and how will they govern it in a virtual world, right? So for example, think of the scenario where the NFTs were hacked through and have been taken up recently. If you go to your regular cops, they may or may not be able to deal with this. So how will the processes be set up? Will Metaverse players start also looking at creating mechanisms that will help some of the physical governance structures and organizations to also be able to govern these things here? Or will it be a completely different governance model? Are the kind of things which are open-ended, which need to be answered. So now moving on to the next slide, the CXO opportunities in a rapidly evolving environment. This is my view of what we are seeing when we're interacting with our customers, various CXOs, what they are looking at. And in general, what we are seeing is, I broad bucket put them into 4 categories. For CXOs, if they are looking at how to get onto Metaverse or why to get onto the Metaverse, one of these 4 or one or more of these has to come into play for them. If you look at brand, you have customer employee centricity, you have innovation and capability. Those are the 4 broad buckets I use. In terms of branding, the way you look at it in Metaverse world is it allows you to tell your story very powerfully and consistently and repeatedly, and while making it an individual personalized experience or along with the social interaction as well. So that is something that CXOs have to leverage, have to talk to their teams, to leverage, to differentiate their storytelling, to differentiate their brand, using the whole concept of storytelling around it, building a story around it, and then making it work. And there are examples already that is already happening in these areas. Procter & Gamble actually launched a beauty sphere in their own digital world. It's available on their web, right? It's on their own Metaverse, if I have to put it that way, where they basically have created a very powerful story on in and around the theme of what ingredients are going in their beauty products, what are their origins, and so how responsible they are for it, and also to some extent how green are these. And the way they have done it is, if you look at the beauty sphere, it provides to the user a view of the Kew Garden, one of the famous gardens. And then as you walk through that, it will generate and narrate the story. It will show you the details and the sense that you're getting. And these also allow you, as you create these storylines through virtual events or exhibitions or immersive experiences through a campaign journey or interactive advertising. This also allows you to create what we call as a consistent and a persistent experience that is available to different users, while each user will experience it differently based on their sense of liking and tastes, but the behavior is available for them to personally experience. Similarly, if you look at it, the customer employee centricity, very powerful and important use cases is what we are dealing with. Most of the IT companies are dealing with right now, and most of the other companies are also dealing with under the pandemic. That how do you create a work from home atmosphere which is effective, and then how do you bring back your employees as COVID recedes? How do you bring them back? How do you make this hybrid model work? Because not everybody is going to come back in a go. This is going to be a slow transient process. It may not be that everybody will come back. It may be a hybrid or a co-working model. So a lot of those things now, dealing with just a video call or a conference call and looking at faces and working through beyond a point is not going to be very effective, especially when you start mixing up teams. So you need to have tools and mechanisms where people can be in the virtual world and the physical world being overlaid, and they could sense and see how it is happening, what is happening, rather than a 2D view and a flat view of the world that they're able to only see based on what the other person is showing at this point of time, right? So a lot of those kind of things around customer employee centricity that you're looking at need to be looked at. For these, in general, what we have seen is people are using the concepts of marketplaces, NFT drops in other marketplaces or in other worlds, which people are then going and picking up. Adidas actually has used this very effectively by collaborating with popular gaming communities and dropping NFTs regularly, which gives customers access to the real world as well as some metaverse goods as well. Right? Innovation is the third area where you can create game-changing customer offerings in the metaverse using the tool sets that are available. Customers are looking for more immersive, more gamified, entertaining experiences. That is what is going to create the stickiness, and those are things that are available in metaverse. So CXOs have to look at how to leverage these things. Is the discussion that we have with them when we are talking to them in terms of how metaverse could be leveraged, what can be done in the metaverse. And the last part is the capability part. For a CXO, if he's looking at or she's looking at getting onto the metaverse, they have to also think of the capabilities that are required and how they will become a little different. So they'll have to think of different combination of skill sets, people, trainings that you will need to have, right? Simple example is you may have to train new designers and developers with specialization in 3D modeling of avatars, of variables and objects that are to be rendered there, and people who are familiar with that kind of a software development toolkits as well. You will also require content creators to be also storytellers who can span across virtual world as well as deal with NFTs, virtual goods, physical goods, and how these are going to come together in terms of e-commerce and community pulling it together. So those are the kind of things that from a capacity perspective, I'll not get into dwell into the details. I think I'm running over time now. So I will probably leave very little time for the Q&A. So let me start cutting down a little bit on this. In terms of use cases across the industries, this is just, again, representative. Metaverse use cases are starting to mushroom everywhere across most of the industries. These are the ones where you have already seen examples. Probably if you have been reading and watching Metaverse items and news articles that are happening, many of them, these industries have already been early adopters. Many of the organizations in these industries have been early adopters of the Metaverse use cases. Let's jump forward, Krishna. These are some of the examples. I'll maybe talk about just one or two and leave it for others, for you guys to explore on your own. So, for example, if you look at Nike, right? Nike came up with a Nike Land game on Roblox, and they use this game to basically brand their shoes, give virtual objects that are going to be available to the users that users can share as well with each other. So a lot of those things using gamification and virtual overlaying of the stuff for the sense of experience and feel is what they have been doing there, on the Roblox. Similarly, if you look at what else, P&G, I've already talked about, Beauty Sphere. JP Morgan has played around with using setting up an Onyx Lounge in the decentralized metaverse real estate. Then if I look at what else, most of these Microsoft Mesh, I think most of us who have been part of IT world know that Microsoft is working very actively on creating an underlying platform for Metaverse, which we refer as Mesh, which is very enterprise-centric to start with, which will allow virtual meetings, virtual conferences, virtual events from an enterprise perspective. But the expectation is that with acquisition of gaming companies, even though those things will also start coming and playing into these areas. If we can move on to the next, please. Yeah. To almost end the discussion, the things that are challenges, security and privacy is a big challenge. How do you protect privacy and data of the user? How do you protect users and during the social interactions from bad behavior, asocial behavior, criminal behavior? All those things will kick in there. How do you secure your digital assets while making them interoperable so that they can go across the worlds when the virtual worlds are different, and all those things. User data and control, similar things. Your user profile, most of the guys, our customers who are looking at getting out of the metaverse, they have their user profiles, their central user identities and profiles managed in systems which are not on metaverse. So for them, one of the big things is interoperability. For how, when somebody creates a digital avatar and gets into a virtual world, how do I recognize the user and make sure that the data that I already have, I can leverage to customize the offerings and the journey and the experience. So interoperability is basically a big area when you look about data, but also how do you create that data, how do you enrich that data is going to be a big question that has to be answered before organizations who work with data would come in big form and big flavors onto the metaverse world. So those are some of the areas that when I say challenges, they are more like still open. Governance is another area that I've touched upon. Vulnerabilities, hardware and device costs we touched upon earlier itself, that some of these head devices that you variables on the head are reasonably heavy, not as user-friendly, cannot be held on for a long period of time. Some of the other devices do not have immersive experiences. How do you translate your journey from an immersive device to a non-immersive device? Because users will require to do that from time to time. We have already seen and experienced that with other devices as well, where continuation of journey is very important. So a lot of those things fall into this area. I had one more slide on what we are doing at Mindtree, but in essence of time, I think we have only another 5-6 minutes left. So I will just put it there and leave it. There are various things that we do in our immersive Aurora, which is basically a physical lab with the virtual setups and the AR, VR toolkits. This was established a few years back when we were focusing on AR, VR, and now we have extended this to also to the metaverse concepts, and we are trying out the physical and the virtual world put together there. So we are leveraging the lab to work on various cases of co-innovation and co-creation with our customer use cases as well as our own enterprise use cases, where Mindtree as an enterprise is looking at things like employee onboarding, engagement, skills and training, and any kind of virtual meetings and events. How do we do that effectively using some of the metaverse constructs? So with that, I will stop. My apologies, guys, that took a little longer. I especially wanted to spend a lot of time on that slide with the 7 layers, because if once you understand that, then I think you start feeling comfortable with the concepts. So over to Amar or whoever else.
Yeah. So Aan, we have a few questions in the Q&A section. I'll in the interest of time, I'll just pick a couple of them so that you can answer before we close the session. And all those the other questions we can send the revert on the mail after the session. There's a question. Somebody is asking, what are the potential downsides for this technological disruption?
So some of them are well known. I think I covered some of them. The things like in the past, we have seen that people get a lot more addicted to the virtual world. There is governance model is not there for these worlds and these areas. Those have to evolve. So a lot of those, if you look at it, whatever I have said are challenges. Those at this point of time are things which are, if you look at it as the cons, if you have to look at pros and cons of the system, those would be the cons of the system is the way I would look at it. Okay. But the important thing to know is this is a new world. Some of these things are evolving. And that is why I use the word challenge rather than saying that it's the downside or the negatives of the platform.
Okay. Another one is, how is Web 3.0 different from the Metaverse?
Again, for many people, as I said, one of the school of thoughts believes and uses a definition that Metaverse is the next intranet. And if you use that definition, then Web 3.0 is also the next intranet after Web 2.0, so they become synonyms. But for many of us, we see Metaverse as a part of Web 3.0. Web 3.0 will have a lot of other things. In a Web 3.0 model, your decentralization of finances, your decentralization of autonomous organizations, the DAOs as we call them, they may or may not exist in the Metaverse world. Unless you want to use a logical definition of Metaverse and say that anybody who's doing this is Metaverse, then probably there's no difference. But conceptually, if you look at it, you could have a blockchain solution which is dealing on the web, working with the people, the wallets and other stuff, but not giving you any virtual immersive experience, right? It's basically in the conventional 2D world, as we call it, of our own desktops and browser-based things. So will that not be part of Web 3.0? Probably that would be wrong classification. So you look at it that way.
Yeah. I think we have many questions, but then, as I said, we'll get back to all the participants who have asked the question on the mail, and we'll share that questions with you on the mail so that we'll reach out to them, because it's important to connect back with them, and we'll share the feedback with you also. And with this, I think we are coming to the end of this session. So thank you, Aan, for the wonderful session. I'm sure that everyone enjoyed it, and there's a lot to take back with them. Everyone has been very participative in the session. There's a lot to take back. And with this, I think we are coming to the end of today's session. I request all of you to please send your feedbacks and suggestions and any questions that you have on events@nasscom.in. Of course, the questions that we already have, we'll answer those, but then any other feedback, any other question that you want to ask, please send it on events@nasscom.in. I thank you, Aan, once again for taking out time and then connecting with the community. And this is Amar signing off for the day. I request everybody to please keep your mask on and stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you.